Hey everyone, Nick Ottinger here with Team Conti Sim Performance. This week in Xfinity Series, we are at the new look of Las Vegas Motor Speedway. So, as you can see, some bright yellow walls, some nighttime racing, and my objective here in this video is to get you guys up to speed, what to expect this week, maybe do a deep dive in some corner entries, some traits that might happen, one side by side in the lanes that we'll be utilizing this week. But nighttime racing is going to have a lot of grip, right? So going to give you guys a 10-lap run here, pit entry, and we'll go over that stuff together, after here. So you can tell, you can probably hear the splitter a little bit in turns 1 and 2, which is the bumpy side of the track. And navigating turns 1 is probably one of the most difficult avenues at this track, just because of how smooth in comparison 3 and 4 is. So you really need to push through the air, dynamically, to get grip into the front, and sometimes you will have some splitter contact in turn 1. So really got to make sure we get down to this bottom line, the weight line here, to make sure we're pushing our angles correct, getting the grip to the left fronts, and utilizing all the grip we have. Especially nighttime racing, it's going to be some cooler track temps. You're probably going to see high 70s to low 80 track temp this week. So it's just what we're going to be dealing with this week. And the biggest thing that's going to happen is it's going to easily chew the fronts up. What I mean by that is it's going to put some pressure and temperature in the right front, specifically because we're just carrying a lot of center speed, right? Carrying a lot of center speed, requiring the front to kind of turn through the, obviously, corner, turn through the banking, and continue to hold that banking. So that's just some attributes that, it's easy to over push early on in the run because of having all this grip and not have enough mid-run, long run, and just have the temperature too high in the right front. So this is, if you guys check out the notes each week, this is why it's really imperative to understand, first 10 laps, 20, around there is really your tire management phase, depending on the track type. And for intermediates like this, it's really important to not, push too far into the corner, and making sure you can't hold that speed, past 15 or 20. So, yeah, it's, as you can see, it's pretty gripped up right here. Not really doing a lot of work out here ultimately in keeping the car on the weight line. And we will have some different lanes to utilize this week. And a lot of it's going to be inducing on your tire management that we just went over. But additionally speaking, pushing towards trying to navigate the dirty air, and making sure we keep some momentum up, because this is a lot of grip. This is a lot of momentum we're going to have, and if you can pinpoint where you're going to find your minimum speed, during your cornering phase, where, let's say for instance, it's in the center of the corner, your minimum speed is the lowest speed you're going to have in the center of the corner. Maybe it's pushed to be about a quarter way through entry before you get back to the throttle, like I am just right now. But likelihood it's going to be in the center of the corner at tracks like this. So you may have to time where that minimum speed is. Realistically, 15-20 laps to a run around a competitor of yours. And maybe you move up that lane that is helping you keep a higher minimum speed than what they're doing, but around the same phase, same exact spot, you have that, minimum speed. So it's, momentum racing is really important. That's racing is obviously, timings and shapings and putting everything together, but momentum base, you're barely off the throttle, and if anything, you're off the throttle, it's to set the nose like you would do later on in the run, at a track like this. So we got 2 more laps here. I'm gonna move up to middle 1 and 2 here and show you guys how much smoother it can potentially be than running that bottom line. And you can see how I'm just able to build that momentum that I just talked about. That minimum speed's a little higher, but it's around the same spot in 1 and 2. So you can see I moved up, and it was a pretty good, smooth, realistic corner. And what I'm going to do now, I'm going to move to the top side in 3 and 4 in that lap. I'm around the bottom here in 1 and 2. So see how bumpy it is once again, trying to run this bottom. Got to wait on the nose to settle, push through it, and you can see, waited on that nose to settle from those bumps, I cost myself half a tenth this lap, right? Just in the 3. So let's run the top side. Let's get closer to the wall, use this wall as much as possible. And there's a lot of grip up there, but that's some risk. And risk assessment is not pushing too far, too fast, going up top too early as well. So now I'm gonna do a pit entry here and focus on really maximizing our potential and making sure we're not overshooting it. So let's just do a smooth entry, make sure we're not overzealous in it, and just get our line correct. Stay as low as possible here off the banking and get to our speed at 50. Pretty slow entry, but it's a consistent entry, right? So that is our objective. Make sure we're consistent on the pit road and work up to that actual full push entry. Okay, so I'm gonna go around another lap. I'm gonna build some momentum so you guys can see me pushing, since I just done a practice run, right? Now I want to actually go through that process of maximizing my lift point and braking, and where I can actually position, driving to that pit entry line. So I'm gonna cut down here a little bit off just to try to get some speed, since we have a lot of grip. Try to use that, nighttime conditions to get some speed back. So I'm gonna build a run like I normally would in any case that we would have coming to pit entry. So I'm gonna go around another lap, get some momentum built in turns 1 and 2. Show you guys the top side of 1 and 2 and how maybe it's just too bumpy to run up there. So let's do that. You can see working through the bumps, have to get out of the throttle quite heavy, but once you get through that phase, having to lift, it's pretty good. It actually has grip and momentum you can build. Problem is, you just have to take up too much entry speed, take out of it. Too much entry speed, and that hurts you. So let's push this entry a little bit further. Push the wide over there, and then gonna have a pretty smooth entry right there. So I would say it's a pretty considerable amount of grip. That's probably the max you will want to push on 30 to 50 lap tires right there. And if you feel the car just can't take that, then just start lifting earlier, but you'd have the same turn away from the actual track to the banking, from the banking to the actual apron, and see if that helps you. So let's do some study of that bottom line like I referenced, and we will go back here, look at our laps here, go to lap 2. That's our quick time, which lap 2 or 3 probably would be your quickest in a full push scenario. Right here, we're just managing our angles, our shapings, and everything like that. So let's go to cockpit view. As you guys seen what we were trying to do, and our turning point, so obviously it's a new, new layout of what we could see compared to the old Vegas. You see this light, we're obviously at the Pennzoil logo. So my objective is to stay as close as I can to that phase until I get to this actual logo here as well, and turn into my that turning point fully away from the wall is going to start my trajectory down to this bottom. Okay, so you see the Pennzoil logo here. That is where I'm braking fully away from the wall if I'm running the bottom line. So let's slow this up. You can see I'm going to load into that banking. Loading into this banking, you can see I'm going to start lifting, and that's again to settle that front end of the car down to these bumps and work through these bumps. So my left front is completely under this first set of dashed lines, right? And that is to make sure I'm not driving straight into the bumps at the height of those bumps, because they're tall bumps here. We're compressing to the track, we're rebounding off the bumps, and we just don't want to get off line here. So my car is pointed down to this weight line, under this dashed weight line, to make sure I can hold it with partial throttle, holding partial throttle all the way down until I reach to the center, right? So I'll rewind this here a little bit again, and you can see I'm partial throttle all the way through here, until I can hold it at the center portion and just work through it. I'm gonna start my linear process and wrap this weight line and keep the grip to it. And that's just on a completely new tires, able to do that. You should be able to do that later on into a run as well. So I would think there's a lot of grip out here in nighttime conditions. So turning away from the wall would be just before you. It's hard to see obviously, but you can see some actual line right here in the 3. You can see I'm already pointing away from the wall, and that is important because this is a smoother side of the track. You're going to load into this banking about the same trend you would have for turn 1, but it's going to be a more gradual feel. It's going to feel smoother, not to say it's smoother just to say it, but it's going to feel smoother in process of lifting and with your wheel angle and being able to actually shape into the bottom line of 3. And you can see you're going to be able to hold more throttle all the way down into the section. So this is the side of the track I think is probably the more challenging in managing your minimum speed, because you have to keep the shaping at the bottom here, keep the shape and angle correct, well into the center. And a lot of drivers will push this section too much, overspeeding in other words. I referenced minimum speed while I was driving. A lot of people will have that minimum speed be too late and cost their that momentum and lap time because it's just too late. They're not letting the car work soon enough, and that's because they're not letting it work into the banking early enough. So keep that in mind. Make sure we're not overspeeding with too much throttle and turning the wheel too late into turn 3. So you can see this wrapping the bottom, continuing to wrap it, and now I'm full throttle a little bit later than I was in 1 and 2, just because of I know I have a more narrow exit of 4, and I want to maximize that exit. So you can see I'm just going to have a narrow exit of 4 of opening the wheel up. And this is where the narrow part comes because the car is going to unload the front a little bit since it's obviously not compressing down to the track and having the full downforce effects of staying down to the track. It's going to come up a little bit, the splitter, just a little bit. That's just the nature of this track and setup philosophy in general. So keep that in mind. Now, we referenced some laps here of running the middle, and I think this would be a lap. Should be lap 9. We'll do a chase view here. And you can see this smooth part in between these dashed marks, as you can see, is realistically what you're going to be looking for. You're going to be able to drive like what Old Vegas was. You're going to be able to drive where you would see this seam on the older version and drive right above it. And if you do that, you can feel how smooth this actual compression zone in the 1 is compared to down here at this dashed mark and below it. So if we put our left front just above this, you're going to feel the bumps a little bit. It's not as drastic as it is once you enter the left just right there below it. So keep that in mind. Let's see it. You see how smooth it is, and we're just able to carry the momentum and keep the same angle of wrapping that weight line, but just about obviously a car length and a half of a lane higher. But you're keeping the same angle and the same shaping following that same angle of the line. So just referencing that so you guys can see that. Now, I'm going to go, once this goes through, we'll do our pit entry on our push lap of push in, and we'll focus towards what that looks like from an outside perspective, right? So, and you can see how much time I cost myself running the top side in this lap, right? Comparing to even being conservative on my lap 11 on pit entry, like I was quicker this lap because I ran the bottom in 1 and 2. Now, if I ran the bottom in 1 and 2 and maximized that with my push in lap, this time would eclipse to be a quicker time. So let's look at this, let this play through, and like I referenced, running the top side, see how I had to take out so much throttle just because of the bumps. But after that, once it settled, it's got a lot of grip and a lot of potential. But that min speed was too slow in 1 and 2. Just because I had to work through the bumps, had to let the front work. So let's find this point. Let's slow this up. And you're going to find a point where I'm going to start fully lifting here and into my braking zone. And that's going to be relatively quick now. You can see I'm working to turn 4 exit. Now it's going to be just before I even... Here, I'll give you guys a better view. before I get to the Lux Lounge, the logo on the wall, right? So that's a good reference of when I'm going to get to my braking. Going to utilize this brake and utilize this banking as much as possible with the wheel straight as possible. So my objective is make sure I'm not using too much brake to stab the car to be too free, but also not have the wheel left and trying to get to the apron sooner, because I don't want to break the car free in that nature with all the braking that I'm adding to it. So I'm getting about roughly 80%, 85% max pressure, downshifted obviously, and then I'm gonna start pulling off this banking here after I get my second downshift done, from third to second. So I slow this up some more, and I'm gonna pull down to make sure I'm in this line, and now I'm gonna make sure I'm at that pit speed of 50, right? So we'll go back to dry review here. Let's slow it up, do it full speed, downshift, and then I'm gonna turn off that bank into the apron, and then just go down pit road. So, but that is us. Some directions of what us as drivers would need to do at pit entry, but overall, I feel pretty happy with how the videos went. If you guys got any questions, really appreciate you guys tuning in, trusting TCSP, for your guys' weeks that you guys join us for. And just some final thoughts. Make sure you're working those lines, not overshooting your entry, especially in the one and bottom and the splitter out, because in order to have some pace, you're going to have some splitter contact at a certain point. And majority of that is going to be at the beginning of a run because of high speeds, but also just because of being able to push those speeds against competitors. So, yeah, if you guys got any questions, my DM's always open. Again, appreciate you guys trusting TCSP, and thank you for watching.